In our last episode, we looked at Queen Mary's marriage to Felipe II of Spain. To Queen Mary, Felipe was the perfect husband, and she fell deeply, passionately in love. But what about Felipe? Let's look at the situation from Felipe's perspective this time. Unlike Mary, Felipe was a highly pragmatic person. For him, their marriage was a political alliance, a means to an end. Felipe had clear objectives, securing England for the Habsburgs. For that ultimate goal, he tried to win over the English people and, more importantly, to produce an heir. Additionally, he sought to reunite England with the Roman Catholic Church and also to draw England into Habsburg's ongoing conflict with France. But when Felipe arrived in England and met Mary for the first time in person, he was deeply disappointed. The reality did not match the flattering portraits he had seen. She appeared much older than he had expected, and he didn't feel any physical attraction to her. But to outsiders, the couple appeared to be deeply in love. Felipe's close attendants were well aware of his true feelings, and they marveled at his performance, because that's exactly what it was. Every affectionate gesture, every tender smile, and every soft whisper was meticulously planned and flawlessly executed performance. But Mary was completely unaware of Felipe's inner thoughts and was intoxicated by his charm. She laughed often in his presence, blushed at his whispers, and basked in his seemingly affectionate gaze. She believed every word, every caress, and every gesture was genuine. But little did she know her happiness was built on an illusion. Despite Felipe's carefully crafted image as a devoted husband, those who observed the couple closely could catch the fleeting realities. When Mary spontaneously displayed her affection and asked him, "Oh, do you love me as much as I love you?" they could see Felipe caught off guard, looking uncomfortable for a split second before recovering and putting on his warm smiles. 2 months after Felipe's arrival in England, good news came. Mary was pregnant. The royal physicians unanimously confirmed the pregnancy, and Felipe wasted no time in sharing this joyous news with his father, Emperor Karl V. For Mary, who had desperately longed for a child, this was a moment of overwhelming happiness. Her body was changing, her menstrual cycle had stopped, her breasts became fuller, and her stomach grew rounder. She gained weight, and her clothes began to feel tight. Mary delighted in these changes, eager to display her growing belly as a proof of the child she carried. With Mary's condition requiring her to avoid overexertion, Felipe assumed greater authority in handling state affairs. This shift in power provided him with an opportunity to advance his own political agenda, most notably officially reconciling England with the Catholic Church. With the help of the papal legate, Cardinal Reginald Pole, the English Parliament agreed to repeal the religious laws enacted during Henry VIII and Edward VI's reign in return for allowing England to keep the Catholic Church's lands and properties confiscated during the Schism. The Parliament also revived laws permitting the arrest and prosecution of heretics, laying the foundation for the persecution of non-Catholics. Once this was done, Felipe felt he had achieved his first 3 major objectives in England. He had gained favor among the English people, Mary was pregnant with an Habsburg heir, and England's religious ties with the Catholic Church was restored. Now his focus turned to his next goal, positioning England as an ally in the Habsburgs' ongoing conflict with France. And for that, he wanted to leave England and join the war against France personally. But beneath this strategic reasoning, there was another, more personal reason. Felipe was growing tired of England. The promise of the kingship of England was not what it was cracked up to be. Despite gaining some authority as the Queen's husband, he found English politics frustrating, burdened by constant oversight and opposition. Unlike in Spain, where his word carried unquestioned authority, England's governing structure left him feeling constrained. And he didn't feel like he was on equal prestige as his wife either. He was not yet King of Spain, and felt his position did not carry enough authority compared to his wife's. He felt like he had to constantly bend his own opinions to please her. And, what is more, the ever-watchful eyes of the court made him feel like he's being tested all the time. And the constant attention and shower of love from Mary was suffocating to him. Felipe longed for freedom, and the truth was, he did not love Mary enough to stay. So he cautiously broached the subject of joining the campaign in the Netherlands. He framed his words carefully, telling Mary that it was only to help out his father, the emperor, and it would be only temporary. He of course anticipated some resistance, but he was unprepared for Mary's reaction. Her face went pale, and then, without warning, her legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed on the spot. Felipe rushed to comfort her. He assured her that he wasn't leaving immediately, and that he was just considering the possibility. But, despite his assurances, Mary was shaken to her core. In her head, she understood that her husband had other responsibilities outside England. But emotionally, she was unprepared for such a conversation. They were still newlyweds, and she was carrying his child. The mere thought of him leaving, especially at such a moment, was devastating. Even with Felipe's efforts to calm her, a deep and unshakable fear started growing in Mary's heart. But then, something else made Felipe stay in England a bit longer. By this point, England was officially a Catholic country, but many still held on to their Protestant faith. Mary wanted to return to a time before religious conflict. But to do that, Protestants had to convert, whether they wanted to or not. And the English Parliament had passed a law allowing for the execution of those who refused to convert. Then, in February 1555, a group of priests refusing to convert were burnt at the stake. Mary had to sign off on their executions, and she did so without hesitation. This was meant to be a warning, but religious faith is not something so easily changed. The executions only fueled resistance. More people defied her, and Mary found herself signing more and more death warrants. With tensions rising, Felipe couldn't just leave England. He decided to stay at least until the baby was born. As April arrived, preparations for the birth began. The due date was set for May, and everyone got ready. Even Elizabeth, who was under house arrest after the Wyatt's rebellion, was released and called to the court to witness the birth. But something wasn't quite right. The Queen's belly wasn't growing as expected. The court physicians didn't want to alarm anyone, so they cautiously revised the due date. Maybe the baby would come in June instead. Then, Mary began to experience labor pains, but nothing happened. May passed and June arrived, and by then, whispers started. What if she wasn't pregnant at all? Of course, no one dared to tell Mary the truth. She was utterly convinced that she was carrying a child. Felipe, on the other hand, was running all kinds of scenarios in his head. If Mary wasn't actually pregnant, it would be a disaster for him. Felipe was a person who cared a great deal about appearances and public image. The thought of his wife not actually being pregnant and him becoming the subject of mockery kept him awake at night. Then July came, and Mary's figure had returned to its usual slim shape. Yet the court doctors, desperate to avoid blame, insisted she was still expecting. But eventually Mary's body told her the truth. Her period started again. The realization devastated Mary. Felipe too had to face his worst fears, but, ever the strategist, he put on a flawless performance. He stayed by Mary's side, offering comfort. With him there, she found the strength to pull herself together. She kept the truth secret, choosing instead to retreat with Felipe to a hunting lodge to lift her spirits. His presence was a great source of support. Afterwards, Mary resumed her duties as if nothing had happened. But after the truth of the false pregnancy came to light, Felipe was growing even more desperate to leave England. Still, he couldn't abandon Mary, who was in fragile emotional state. If he left, the backlash would be immense. So he stayed a little longer, and, with him by her side, Mary seemed to recover, at least on surface. Meanwhile, the situation outside England was growing more complicated. Felipe's father, Emperor Karl V, was aging, sick, and exhausted from dealing with ongoing wars. He began seriously considering abdication. Felipe was needed elsewhere, especially in the Netherlands, where the war was raging. By August, Felipe gathered the courage to broach the subject with Mary again. She was devastated. She clung to him, sobbing, begging him not to go. He reassured her over and over, promising he would return soon. To ease her fears, he even offered to leave his Spanish attendants behind to show that his absence was only temporary. Eventually, Mary understood. The political situation made it impossible for her to keep him in England. She chose to believe in his promise to return. And so, on August 29, 1555, Felipe left London. Before departing, he promised her he'd be back in time for Parliament's opening on October 21st, less than 2 months away. The night before, they had already said their long goodbyes. But when the time came to watch him sail away, Mary struggled to keep her composure. She maintained her dignity before her court, but inside she was already breaking. As Felipe's attendants lined up, one by one, kissing Mary's hand before departing, she held back her tears. But the moment the last one left, she rushed upstairs. From the balcony, she watched Felipe's ship. She had sworn not to cry, but as she stood there, the tears wouldn't stop. The entire court watched in silence. Felipe, standing on the deck, saw her weeping from afar. He briefly disappeared below, then re-emerged, taking off his hat and waving it toward her. Then the ship disappeared over the horizon. That night marked the beginning of an endless series of letters. She threw herself into her work to distract herself, but at night, when she was alone, she could only think of him. And so she wrote to him, every day. Wherever Felipe went, Mary's letters awaited him. So that's the story of Mary's heartbreaking false pregnancy. But what happened to Felipe after he left England? We will cover that in the next episode.